Hello, my name is Vint Cerf. I'm Vice President and Chief Internet Evangelist at Google, but for purposes of this short video, I'm a member of the Interplanetary Networking Special Interest Group of the Internet Society, and I'm also a visiting scientist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, in addition to being an advisor to NASA through its NASA Advisory Committee. So I feel like I have at least a few bits of credit to talk a little bit about the commercialization of space. Way back in 1998, a group of us got together at the Jet Propulsion Lab to talk about what we should be doing 25 years hence. And we concluded we should be developing an interplanetary backbone network that would emulate in some sense the way the terrestrial internet works today. So we quickly discovered, of course, that TCP/IP was not your friend at interplanetary distances with speed of light delay limitations. For example, between Earth and Mars, when we're farthest apart in our orbit, it's a 40-minute round trip time. So a new suite of protocols had to be developed to deal with the variable delays and disruption of space communication. And that protocol suite is now called the Bundle Protocol Suite, and it's been standardized by the Consultative Committee on Space Data Systems and also the Internet Engineering Task Force. The CCSDS standardization flows through the International Standards Organization, and of course, IETF stands on its own. These two formulations have been kept in sync by a group of people who've been working with both of the agencies. A great deal of attention has been paid to security and also to the challenges of network management in a highly variably delayed environment. Ping is not your friend in this environment, especially when it's not clear exactly when a response could be anticipated. So there's a lot to learn and a lot of testing to do and a lot of development work, not least of which is to get the bundle protocols onto a variety of different operating system and hardware platforms that might be likely found in applications in space, whether it's on the moon or in orbit or en route in a spacecraft to visit one of the icy moons of Jupiter, or maybe even on the way out on an interstellar mission, at least to sense the interstellar environment, which, of course, I'm sure you all know, the two Voyager spacecraft have been doing for more than 30 years now. Well, none of that sounds like it's a very commercial activity, but now I draw your attention to what's coming next. First of all, it's very, very clear that the lift capability to get into orbit has changed dramatically over the past decade or so. We now have commercial competing entities, it would include SpaceX and Blue Origin and others, that are capable not only of lifting into orbit around the Earth, but also landing the first stage back onto terrestrial territory for purposes of reuse. That is a dramatic change from the classic launch scenario in which the first stage is discarded typically in the ocean. That reduces the absolute cost of putting things into orbit or getting them further away from planet Earth to the moon and Mars and beyond. So that's the first very important change in the last decade or so. The second thing, which has turned out to be quite exciting, is the return to the moon. These are the Artemis and Gateway missions that the United States is pursuing with partners in other parts of the world and other space efforts by other countries, some of which are aimed at the moon, some of which are aimed further out to Mars, for example, or possibly to some of the asteroids or comets that are part of our solar system. The commercialization part is fast upon us because the Artemis mission, which has been sponsored by NASA and its colleagues or its cooperating agencies, includes a provision for commercial sector engagement, the so-called CLIPS program. One of the examples of this is communications, which could be supplied on a commercial basis, or even mining on the moon, which raises a collection of very interesting questions about ownership and private property and jurisdiction and protection of rights and things of that kind. Under the older outer space treaties from roughly 1967, there's not supposed to be any ownership of the planetary bodies and satellites in the solar system. But to be frank with you, as commercial value begins to emerge from the assets that are found in space, my guess is that we will have to change our view about whether people are allowed to own things on planets and moons and other parts of the solar system that are non-terrestrial. Well, that's still to be determined, but in fact the question is who will determine that and how remains an open question. What institutions might need to be created in order to deal with the potential commercialization of activities in space? And I think these are questions that are as yet in many ways unanswered. And the pressure, I believe, is quite high to get answers because the Artemis mission is expected to be landing people on the moon in the mid to late 2020s. Well, here it is 2023, so the mid to late 2020s are not very far away, and we should have answers before we have problems, if possible. So I'm very excited about the possibilities that we are beginning to see with space-based communication, the possibilities of a mix of government and commercial networking to support manned and robotic space exploration throughout the solar system, all of which is coming very, very rapidly. It's extremely important that we have this conversation at Interop in Japan, because that Interop is the place historically where the internet became a visible potential component of the commercial sector. And again, we're seeing Interop early on paying attention to commercialization in places where it hasn't been before. So I draw your attention to my colleagues' presentations. Come and join us at IPNSIG.org and be part of the renewed space exploration and exploitation program, which is now underway around the world. I'm sorry I can't be there in person to speak with you, to meet and talk about these things, but perhaps we'll see each other on the net.